Good morning, everybody. Eli Perry here, once again, back with another video on the effects and the techniques and the nature of propaganda in the 21st century. And first off, I want to apologize for my long absence. I was actually away from home for a week, visiting friends and relatives in the United States, which was an interesting experience, to say the least. But I wanted to make this video today specifically in order to talk about one particular Woozle hunt that we are now watching unfold live in real time, which we know is a Woozle hunt that is intended to influence the, as of this morning, ongoing United States federal general election, and which we know comes directly from Russia. And this is a video which has sprouted up on social media over the last few days, which purports to show a legal Haitian immigrant man stating that he is going to vote at least twice for Vice President Kamala Harris in the United States presidential election. This is allegedly taking place in Georgia. And this is part of a long-running narrative on the American populist right that legal or illegal immigrants are voting, often voting multiple times under obviously fraudulent circumstances in order to assist the election campaign of American Democratic politicians. This is something that's been talked about. God, I remember people talking about, the dangers of illegal immigrant voting when I was in high school back in the late 90s. So this is an old story. Which probably goes back to before the shift in Russian propaganda towards engaging with the American right. This is probably something which well predates that. But what's interesting about this is that we have a fairly well-established chain of citation and chain of evidence for where this particular story actually comes from. Now, the story was originally posted by a pro-Donald Trump social media influencer from the American state of Massachusetts using the handle AlphaFox78. Now, this is a person who has made a significant number of pro-Trump posts on X and other forms of social media over the last couple of months, apparently, at least. I have not had a time to go back and really dig into this. I'm going off of what I can find in fairly major national media at this point. But it appears, from what I can see, that this is a person who's quite engaged in that end of the propaganda ecosystem. Posted this video. The Georgia Secretary of State's office has since come out and said that every single thing in there was faked, and that some of the fakes were pretty laughably bad, including a really bad fake ID. And the interesting thing here is that AlphaFox78 sat down anonymously with CNN to discuss where did this claim come from. Now, bear in mind, this is someone with more than 600,000 followers on Twitter, or X, or whatever it's called these days. So this is not a person who is lacking in reach. This is a person who, if they put a fact out there into the ecosystem, they are going to start a very large Woozle hunt very quickly, because lots of people are going to be repeating that information and citing each other and creating this chain. And so this person gave a series of interviews over the phone and over text with CNN over a period of several days, in which they stated that they had posted the video without fact-checking it. There we go. The first step in the Woozle hunt. And in particular, that they got the video from a very interesting gentleman living in Australia by the name of Simeon Boikov. Now, if you don't know this guy's actual name, you may know him under his social media handle, Aussie Cossack. Now, he became somewhat infamous in the early days of the Russian escalation in Ukraine, firstly for being a really just outrageous proponent of some of the wilder Russian propaganda stories, like Ukrainian biological labs building mosquitoes that were intended to transmit AIDS only to Russians. But also because he had to seek asylum in the Russian embassy in Australia after he was arrested for pushing a 70-plus-year-old man down some stairs. This is not a nice person. This is a person who is neck-deep in working for the Russian propaganda apparatus. He is, in fact, a registered foreign agent of Russia in Australia. So we have the receipts on this guy. We know what he is. He is a dedicated, professional, acknowledged Russian propagandist. And he was the person who provided the video to this social media poster in Massachusetts. Paid him apparently about $100 US. Um, and that is confirmed by an anonymous source in CNN. I generally don't put a whole lot of weight behind anonymous sources, um, but CNN has been pretty good about not chasing down too many woozles in this Russia business. They've got their own woozle problems, but not when it comes to Russia, in my experience. Um, Now, the really interesting thing about this is that Boikov is connected to an in-house social media propaganda outfit called, what is it, Storm 1516. Now, I've had a little bit of time this morning to dig into this. I have not been able to find too much information about the actual sort of place in the chain of command of Storm 1516. It appears that it may have been at one point connected to Wagner Group and their in-house propaganda agency, the Internet Research Agency. They may also have had at one point connections to the former Russian Minister of Defense, Sergei Shoigu, who ran an independent PMC and propaganda outfit of his own in competition with Wagner Group. They're a little bit shady, they're a little bit shadowy, but the interesting thing here is that they have been stated by the American and the Australian intelligence communities as being the origin point for a lot of these more recent social media hoaxes, these woozles. And one of the interesting things about this whole business is that Alpha Fox 78 made statements to CNN that the fake Georgia Haitian immigrant video was not the first time that he had been asked to post this kind of thing. Over time, Simeon Boikov had paid him roughly $100 per post to post what started out as sort of anti-establishment, anti-imperialist, anti-American memes. And this is kind of how a lot of these professional woozle starters operate, just like any other form of con. They will begin with a small, fairly innocuous thing that they ask someone to do, and over time, the intensity and the effectiveness of the tasks they assign gets more and more and more serious. Anybody who's studied the way that criminal gangs and organized crime work, or terrorism, is familiar with this. The first couple of operations are what are usually referred to as confidence building operations or blooding operations. They get somebody over the sort of buck fever that you don't want getting in the way of the real job, while giving them a little bit of operational experience and some idea of how the procedures and things work. And then the really important stuff is sent their way. And that appears to be what happened with Alpha Fox 78. He was paid over time to post increasingly inflammatory memes, and then he was paid the same amount of money to start this Woozle Hunt. And this is really interesting in regards to the woozles that have surrounded the American election, because there have been several Woozle Hunts specifically regarding Haitian immigrants that have been started or amplified by what are obviously Russian propaganda organs. The whole story, which you probably heard weeks to months ago, about Haitian immigrants allegedly eating pets or eating, ducks from the town park, things like that. Some of that was started by obvious Russian propagandists. Some of it was started by political figures. Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance went on television and admitted that he made the whole thing up in order to start a conversation. The other word for that is starting a Woozle Hunt. This particular incident with Alpha Fox 78 is very instructive for us, both because we kind of have the receipts. We can see most of the chain of provenance of this information, but because one of the participants, not person A, that appears to be Simeon Boikov, but person B is talking about what happened and how. Pay attention to this. This is an incredibly instructive example of the way that Woozle Hunts start and the way that they are intended to be used that is happening right in front of us, effectively in real time. Because again, this is about creating action. Alternate reality propaganda, which in this case is creating a reality in which immigrants vote multiple times for Democratic candidates and Haitian immigrants eat people's pets, and oh God, this is a Haitian immigrant, therefore a pet eater, therefore voting for Kamala Harris. This is something that is intended to drive action. On a surface level, it's intended to drive votes, voting behavior. On a deeper level, all propaganda works, if it's really effective, on several different levels, driving action of several different types. On a deeper level, there may be a far darker impulse behind this. Because remember, part of the point of no reality propaganda is to create competing, polarized, alienated groups, each of which believes in a different alternate reality, and set them against each other. Keep your eyes peeled, folks. Don't trust but verify. Just verify.